say thank you for the opportunity and impetus to read this book, because it's been on my to-read list for many, many, many years, and this made me do it. And man, I get what the big deal is, and I couldn't put it down, and it did not have to dig very far to see the relevance in even today's world.
Yeah, I agree. I do think I read it in like high school.
I didn't. It never made, there's so many good books, and it never made my list.
Well, no, like I had to read it in high school.
No, that's what I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Never got assigned.
Yeah. But yeah, I totally agree. I had like a little notebook.
Recording which one we're talking about?
Oh, what's that?
Do we need to say for the recording which book we're talking about?
Oh, can you guys see my screen too?
Yeah, I'm bouncing because I took notes too.
Okay, great. So we read The Grapes of Wrath, and we read it. So the reason I chose this book is that I had read about like the very first climate change book club, they called themselves, which actually apparently was here in Stillwater, Minnesota. And they had chosen this book, and I was like, like, okay, I get it, I guess. Like, that must be, I kind of see where they're going with that. And, but I also, since that time, we've been doing a lot of work in the arts community this last month or two, hosting a few plays, and the most recent one was on actually Friday night about Micronesia and the migration of all the folks from Micronesia with rising seas. And the like theme just sort of transcended this, you know? Like I was just like, this book is so contemporary.
It is.
It's so, and I love, because I as a reader, like, I love the idea that we can look at these classics again through a contemporary issue lens and make them like modern books again, because I like mourn the loss of people reading classic books. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this just plays that job, that role. So, hi. Lucy.
Hi.
Lucy, hi, I'm Kristen. Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you.
Are you in California?
Yeah.
Great. I heard you joined last month, so it's good to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you want to meet?
Hi, Wendy.
There's Wendy.
And Sarah?
Sarah's cooking dinner. And we think we have someone else on, but they haven't announced themselves, so maybe they're just listening in. I'm like, we have nothing to hide, so they sure can.
All right.
We had just kind of jumped in, Lucy, to talking about the book and what we thought of it. What were your first thoughts about it?
Okay.
Or you didn't have to have, did you read it?
I read it about 3 years ago.
Okay.
And at that time, I thought, whoa, this is a climate change classic. But, you know, I talked to a couple of people in the English department about it. And I just saw a report recently that, a science report that says that, you know, in terms of changes in, I think it was the fourth National Climate Assessment. Yeah, that said that the Grapes of Wrath, Dust Bowl. Well, they didn't say Grapes of Wrath. They said the Dust Bowl was the, still the benchmark for drought and climate change due to that. I mean, and changes in the hydrological cycle due to that.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
So you had thought immediately, like when you read it, this is a climate change classic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never read it when I was a kid.
I didn't either. I finally got to read it because of this, and Gosh, it's just so timely and so relevant. And like there were certain quotes that just stuck with me, and they will stick with me as we play out people that do need to migrate based on the, changing situations for them, whether it's drought or flood or sea level rise or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or conflict due to those things, starting.
Right.
Right.
Right. Or conflict because they're migrating. I mean, like, it's like one conflict can induce migration and migration can induce conflict. And this book played that out in very personal ways, right? But not much beyond the eyes of a small population.
Right. Krista, hi. Welcome.
Aloha.
Haven't seen you for a while. I'm glad you could join us today.
Yeah, I couldn't keep up, but I saw you were doing this book, and I was like, wow, so awesome. And so I really just want to listen today, and I'm teaching climate fiction. The course is called Cli-fi, Sci-fi, and the Culture of Sustainability. And
Fantastic.
I want to add this to my book list. So thank you for doing it. Of course, I've read it. I lived in California. It's my daughter's favorite book, actually. She's 18.
Oh my gosh.
So I know it resonates, with young people. And yeah, it just didn't totally occur to me. I'm so focused on people who are writing about climate change,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know, it's just great. So I'm really just chiming in to listen, and so glad you guys have been keeping up the book club.
Great. Yeah, I was saying that before you jumped in, one of the biggest things for me with this, because you mentioned, you've been looking at just the books writing about climate change, is that I am a lover of classics, and I've kind of mourned the loss of a focus on classics, and that the opportunity to look at a classic through the lens of a contemporary issue is so cool. And how this is, I read this and I kind of flitted between like the full on like modern day experience of folks that are being displaced or relocated to like actually almost the feeling you get when you read a post-apocalyptic, cli-fi novel, where the descriptions are just spot on. It's the same sense of like hopelessness and distress and like challenge. And it's just, and I'm like, how could this be written in 1939? It's so contemporary. Like,
yeah. Well,
and it's being written as like, it's a historical novel,
not
an imaginary novel.
Mm-mm. Right. Mm-mm. Right.
One of the, falling right on that, Kristen, the thing that just, on top of everything you just described, I kept feeling that as I thought about then and now, at least for our society, the differences in coping skills and expectations of what comes with life, there's no comparison.
Mm-hmm.
These people that were forced into migration and described in this story were used to a tremendous amount of self-sufficiency and making do with very little, and then they got forced into whole new levels of that. And I think, I think about our society and how many people know how to fix a car or get by with a meal a day comparatively.
Mm-hmm.
Just on and on, how to, get by on some bones, and there's just no comparison. And that left me feeling unsettled, to say the least, in terms of how bad it is when you have coping skills. And what does it look like, and what would that research even look like for people that simply have never had to develop those level of coping skills?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We read in this club, We Are Unprepared, right?
I don't think so.
There's a novel that actually answers that exact question, and it's about.
Let's go find it.
Yeah, it's about a superstorm. These kind of like young couple who moved to the country in Vermont to learn how to can pickles and do like charming, sustainability thing.
Right.
They don't actually know how to do anything.
Well, there's a movie coming out about that, or there's a TV show. Has anyone seen the ads for that?
Is
The
that
big
called
little,
Society?
I've seen the ads for it, but I haven't seen the movie, The Big Little Farm or something like that, right?
Yeah.
The Big Little Farm.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. That's interesting though, because I feel like that's another, I had a list of, oh yeah, that's the next slide. I had kind of like brainstormed some of the themes that I saw coming out of this that were related. This is just like a quick 2 seconds, but the big one in the beginning I thought was this, it all starts out with like what happens when a disconnect with the earth happens.
Yeah.
And all of that description about the tractor and then how they called it like the monster, basically. And he said,
you know, with me too.
Yeah, like what happens when, so like you've got the people that own the land and they're on the land, but then they like get more land, and so they get people that manage the land, and so they don't really connect, and then they get the tractor, and the tractor just, you know, disconnects them more and more and more from the land, and this is what happens is we abuse it. The description was just like beautiful. He loved the land no more than the bank loved the land. He could admire the tractor, its machine surfaces, its surge of power, but it was not his tractor. Behind the tractor, like just the iron that separated them. And instead of feeling the warmth and power of the earth, he sat in an iron seat and stepped on iron pedals. Ugh.
Is that somewhere around like the early 200s? Are you looking?
Yeah, it's on 45 in this is my book that my grandma inscribed to me. And
that's so awesome. Well,
1991.
in my book, one of the quotes on 205 about the tractor was, "Is the tractor bad?"
Yes.
And I thought, like, if I was a teacher in today's world, I would just have all my students riff and write me essays and stories on, is the tractor bad, and take that from a million different angles.
Mm-hmm.
The tractor is just being a tractor, and the people who invented the tractor were trying to do good.
Yeah, like we've got a bad thing made by men or something, they said. Yeah.
They were trying to feed more people.
I know, like that was right. And it was, but because of the disconnect that occurred, they were unable to see what was happening, you know, because of it. Yeah, I thought that was really, really, and then the rise of industrialization and big ag, and I thought that
today the front page of the USA Today had something about 3 dairy farms a day going under in Wisconsin throughout the month of April.
Oh wow!
Because of really the weather was the driving force behind the closures this month, but it was the culmination of just a long string of things related to big milk business.
Yeah. Yeah. So what other themes? I mean, I have, of course, like this whole xenophobia piece, just like ugly, but also you can see understand kind of like when you could see all the people coming, surging in, and people being like, who are these people? And then being like, wait a minute, there's more and more, and that sense of what happens.
Well, like in the article that you gave us, you know, the idea of the story of immigrants as being, you know, one of victims of threat and of flood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the ways to avoid that, all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To see immigrants as people who could bring with them solutions.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you just feel, I mean, reading this, I feel like students reading this, you can't help but, I mean, you feel like what it feels to be an immigrant, you know, and forced into a new place. And I thought they were really good too at describing I have intergenerational, what I meant by that was like how the move was for the young, not for the old, that the old people would never again feel at home in a place, and the young people
Right.
would be
Right,
able
the grandpa couldn't even leave, right?
Right, exactly, right.
Because he had too much connection to that land.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, although told in story form, I thought the constant battle of the stressors of the situation bringing out both the best of people and the worst in people.
Yeah.
Interpersonal, intergroup, interstate, it's felt so very, very real as an expectation every time people are forced together in any crisis situation. You see the good, and the stress brings out the bad too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the exploitation, right?
Yeah.
Unbelievable enslavement and exploitation that was going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of the bad.
Oh, I loved this quote too. There are so many good ones, but I loved this. I don't know if anyone has favorite quotes they'd want to share, but this was so visual to me. I love the style of the book too. Like every other chapter, like you're with the Joad family, or you're just sort of a general.
Yeah, it's masterful writing.
Oh, so beautiful. It's so fun to read such a well-written book. Yeah. I've been in sort of like crappy reading phase.
Yeah.
Can I chime in on that? I really agree. And one of the other questions that I ask in my literature course is like, what is literature? Mm-hmm. And what makes something a literary novel? And are some of these emerging cli-fi novels, like, are they literary novels? And it's a really interesting question because I was an English major as an undergrad. I'm an English professor. And I can really authentically engage with the question of like, well, what is literature? What makes it literature? Mm-hmm. I just kind of feel like I just know it when I see it, So it's interesting to have this conversation with students. And so this would be so great, because what you're saying is just like, it when you see it. Yeah. And so much of the cli-fi is, interesting because of the situation we're in, but not literature.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of any. I would love to be on a quest to find, I would argue, flight behavior is literature, of course. Although her latest, I would argue, was not her best. But
would you say that again?
Barbara Kingsolver's Flight Behavior.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So her latest book, Unsheltered, was a bit of a disappointment to me, I would say. But it also has climate change themes in it. But that is literature. But reading this actually made me want to think more about classics now again, and ones that we could look at. I would say that this has probably always been a climate change novel, and you maybe 10 years ago, and still we were talking, whenever cli-fi, I'm sure, emerged, we would have been talking about it differently though, because I think this climate migration issue, and immigration in general, of course, is like right in our face right now because of the state of our country. But climate migration has risen up as this huge thing just in like the last 5 years that we're really thinking about it and being aware of it. And I think that has made this even more of a like, yes, this is climate fiction. Because it helps us truly think about and understand what it means to have to leave where you're from because of environmental conditions and go to a new place and survive or try and thrive. They're still in survive mode, but
yeah.
You were asking about favorite quotes, and I have one that I pulled out related to sort of, I think it's a slightly different part of the book from the one you had up, but in the spirit of problem solving, that I thought make a powerful conversation point.
Yeah.
It's the whole conversation about the power of the couple of minds and couple of families coming together. And I don't know what page it was on, but it doesn't matter because you have different books. But it said 2 men are not as perplexed as one. And it was part of their immediate problem solving in the face of hopelessness. And that they were each feeling defeated individually, but when they came together and realized they had common problems, then they had new hope for tackling the problems. And I thought that was another amazing point to build off the discussion about our current situation.
Well, I mean, it is also interesting. I mean, that was a theme that I didn't spend as much time thinking about. I mean, I thought about, but just also how they kept trying to force people apart so they wouldn't, so communism or whatever we're organizing, and thinking about or looking for those themes right now, or in what ways is the man or whoever trying to force apart organizing around this issue right now, around people that are rising up. And you see that theme playing out. I mean, Standing Rock is like a great actually example of that, where if beating down on people that are standing up for something that has to do with them. And
their separation of kids from their families at the border.
Well, absolutely, right. I was trying to think of something that was climate, that is climate. They are climate migrants. Yeah.
Yes, they are, because of that. Because if you go to Honduras, there's the dry corridor, and that's where a whole lot of farms have failed, and that's where a whole lot of the immigrants are coming from, because it's a drought. Is it a climate-associated drought? I don't know if that's been proven, but
I've read a few articles that frame the current refugee crisis at the border, if we want to call it that, as climate refugees, for sure. Yeah. Any other quotes people had they wanted to share, or any other themes that they were thinking about?
I have another theme and another quote. I think this one builds off where we were just, there was the quote about, it was the xenophobia related thing where they ain't human because humans wouldn't choose to live like they do. That was just the ultimate capturing of dehumanization of someone in a suffering mode. And it reminded me of the guilt is too much to think that anything that you could have possibly done might drive someone else to be in such a suffering space. So you make up a whole new storyline about how they must be bad. Because that would never happen to you,
Right.
And that one's going to stick with me for a while because, well, A, it plays out every day. B, it looked awfully easy for people to get that, right? Unfortunately, this book didn't tell the flip side of, I'm sure there were lots of people that were more understanding, and this book didn't tell that side of the story.
Well, we met some folks, though, that were, I feel like, trying to.
There were some folks along the way.
Yeah.
They just didn't, it wasn't balanced reporting from the, I mean, maybe it wasn't balanced, right? Like maybe the suffering was so much outweighed those moments, those glimmers of goodness, but that quote's going to stick with me for a while because it's.
No, I.
Well, go ahead, Krista. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I recently read the psychological term for this, making up a new story to make yourself feel better about what's happening. It's called terror management.
Yeah.
I was like, that's it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. Well, I mean, I think that one of the problems with, this is a book about, people who were organizing and communists and so on, all of that. and their limitations, right, in the 1930s. So it has kind of gives us a little distance from it.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, the fact that we say that most people, you know, most of these people's experiences was so bad, it was really, if you really think about it, it's not that, it's that there were a few people in power who had the power to, you know, to give the wages or not give the wages, you know. And if they had had more money, you know, people in towns wouldn't have felt so, you know, bad about having them around, and so on, right?
Well, and it started too that, you know, we have all these people moving in and big corporations taking over and smaller farms closing down, that soon the locals were those individuals that were struggling as well. Yes. So it was hard for them to help out when they were also struggling. So, and that's the part that really stuck with me as well, that it wasn't just the people coming in, it was the locals that were suffering. So,
yeah, that's a pretty tough boat to be in when you have begun to suffer and those that have been suffering longer suddenly show up at your doorstep because they heard of a promised land that they were willing to do what they did to get there. Mm-hmm. Wonder where I've heard that before.
Sarah, do you, I was, not to put you on the spot, but like having students that live in a smaller, I'm just thinking like what it would be like to read this like as city kids versus students, because I know you live in a much smaller town and you probably have, I mean, do you have ag students there?
Yeah. We don't have any. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say if any, like perspective wise, if there would be a different perspective, if you've like thought about farming and understand what it's like to be forced to leave like your land versus, I don't know.
I don't know. They probably might have a little bit more appreciation for this and have, you know, connect to it a little bit more, understanding how valuable their land is to making a profit. And if, you know, like right now, farmers around us were struggling to get the seed in because it was so wet. We've had a lot of flooding down here with the river, and it's just been raining and raining. And when it finally dried up enough, I had students that weren't in school for a day or so because they were helping their parents, you know, plant before the next rainstorm came. And they were, you know, I had my track manager come and she goes, we planted all through the night just to get it in. But,
yeah. So I do. I mean, hearing that, that's like, you can see there being a really different perspective reading this, so much like deeper than the one that I had. That's cool or interesting.
To me, this question of immigration, how we treat immigrants, is just it's such a crucial part of just how we're going to handle this whole climate crisis, right? Like, what are, you know, are we going to try to, you know, cover ourselves over and protect our little communities and fall into an impoverished, you know, a biologically impoverished version of the darkest of the dark ages, you know, the medieval, or are we going to, you know, take everything we've learned about, you know, about the diversity of human experience and the unity of human experience across all these different, you know, things, and our, you know, internet and our new laws and so on, and our new approach towards inclusion, right? Are we going to take that and consciously make it what we do when we respond to climate? It's like whether, are we going to be humane or not? You know, are we going to be human or not? Right.
Right. Well, and I mean, that's a really good segue or connection to something that, I mean, we've been thinking about all year, well, for a while, but like thinking about the role of fiction and helping us understand other experiences and develop more of that empathy piece. And also the role, something that I have been thinking the last couple of weeks, there was an article that, a study that just came out through, it was posted all over, but NPR had a big article on it that was showing the high percentage of teachers and parents that think we should be teaching about climate change, but of course that we're not, that teachers are not. And the reason why, the largest reason why, it was like 68% or something of teachers didn't see how it fit in their curriculum.
Right.
And I kind of not puzzling. I mean, I know not super puzzling, but like science teachers, of course, have always seen this, but this is a problem we're facing right now, trying to get teachers to sign up for our Teacher Institute this summer. The focus is social studies and language arts, and teachers in that area still are not seeing themselves. They don't understand that climate change is like the most, like, it's the easiest thing for them to teach about. Like, it's the best subject to start from, you know? And I think that's where that high percentage is coming from. It isn't the science teachers that are saying that. It's the teachers in other subject areas that are.
I think science teachers have a little bit of blame.
There are some, but I would say a larger percent is probably in that humanities area. And I think I've always felt very strongly that not only do we need to like understand how climate change works, but we need to be developing empathy. That is like that's actually like one of the like competencies that are required to be climate change literate, is to have an understanding of how we are all connected and how, you know, we have to do something about this issue. And fiction is a way that we develop empathy. Like, this is, understand.
Well, Grapes of Wrath makes a fantastic connection, and if we could make a more compelling, broadly broadcast story to, you know, language art teachers all over the country about the connection, and make it, you know, like the modules that you did for the other topic areas. If you could do modules around Grapes of Wrath and distribute them to people that are like, I need to pick books for my whatever level class this year. Like, here's some ideas for you.
It's in our cli-fi reading guide as a start, but I agree with you absolutely.
I think English teachers got to do those modules, though. I don't think science teachers should do them.
No.
Yeah,
because,
and you could pull in
like,
the
for
social
example,
studies aspect.
Yeah, like when I think it was Sarah just now said, you know, what is literature? I'm like,
yeah.
So,
Krista, did you want to jump in there?
No, but I'm still listening.
Okay. I couldn't tell if you were trying to jump in with us battling along.
Well, I was just having a thought about another novel. You know, they when they pair so interestingly, and then the other novel that I was thinking about is World War Z.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of displacement and migration. And there's actually some literary analysis about zombies representing fear and disconnection and like literally mindlessness. You know, zombies are mindless hordes. And so I don't know, it's just what I'm kind of thinking about, because World War Z is really a fantastic novel, and I know like high school students or my college students would really like it. The movie is terrible, but the novel is amazing.
That would be fascinating to pair up with it. Like, I love that idea.
Right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I want to take your class. I'm going to move to Hawaii for the fall.
Hey, it's online. I'm offering it online.
No, you have to go to Hawaii.
No, the point was Hawaii.
No, the point. Yeah. You know, if any of you would like to, like, you know, ghost in my class, or, you know, just join it, you're welcome to.
Well, I'd love if you send information about it. I'd love to
pass it on.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm saying yes, please.
Yeah, Lucy's saying yes, please.
Great.
Lucy's closest to you too, actually. It's interesting, actually, Krista. This play. I don't know if you were online, but this play that we helped facilitate discussion around this weekend. It was a a group of actors who had come from Hawaii that were from Micronesia, and they were talking about displacement, and they were from different islands there. And the experience of being, I mean, the horrible racism that they've experienced, and also just what it means to migrate from there and know that you're, I mean, that story as the modern day, you know, migration story is absolutely spot on with this book. I was thinking about it the whole time, but
oh yeah, I had to read that play. Maybe I'll follow up with you about that.
yeah,
You know, the biggest populations of Micronesians live in Kentucky now.
no, really,
I thought it was Oklahoma, which would be
that would
ironic.
be ironic, yeah.
Because I read a
Kentucky.
Era magazine, you know.
Oh, okay. Well, I just found out we had a community out in western Minnesota of like 300, which is in a tiny town. It's must have all come, but super. Super. It's called Master of the Currents, and it was a Teada Theater, I think is what it's a Hawaiian theater production. But yeah, I can send on the information. It's touring the country. So
I should probably know about it.
Yeah. Master of Currents. Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
So Chris and I, another theme that we haven't talked about that emerged for me, and I just wondered if you had got a slide on it or not.
I'm done with my slides, I think, so go for it. Tell me what your other theme is. Yeah.
Well, I'd love to hear your all comments on this. I couldn't help but miss the emergent feminine power of Ma.
Yeah.
As their situation deteriorated.
Mm-hmm.
The book starts with the men make all the decisions and the women sit back and cook in the house and tuck meekly behind the door when trouble. And as their struggles go on, right up till the end, it's the women that are holding things together. And I was wondering, especially from people that study history more than I have since I've had my head in science for so long, are there other emergent themes about when times get rough, the power of the family and the women and the feeding and the whole, you know, responsibilities, how that comes to play in facing crisis?
Yeah.
I read something about this, but I was in relation to war. And
yeah, well, same thing.
It turns out that with war, you know, women end up being a little more powerful during the conflict. And
right.
Then in the peace process, it's a very conservative process. It it's like it reestablishes conservative traditional values in the negotiating.
And
lose their power in those months and that year of. So
interesting. Well, that's just power playing out again, right?
Right.
That's what the war was for.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was sort of like Pa kept saying, well, I guess like it became more and more as they got to the end, like I guess the women just say what we do now, or I guess like,
yeah.
I mean, the psychology of all that is just so incredibly deep, though, right? That if the men's power structure and their parameters for defining their role and their success had been there and were stable, and they were fully disrupted, their feet are pulled out from underneath them in that scenario. Yet the women struggle to still make sure the family stays together and that people are fed is a constant.
Mm-hmm.
And so their power would grow through the challenges.
It's interesting it's very, for an old book, for like 1939 and a male writer, they actually are pretty, there's like a lot of depth to the female characters in the book. I mean, like he actually, versus like the men are actually a little bit more superficial almost. Do you think about it?
Yeah.
Go Steinbeck.
Well, it would be fascinating to know those that are looking at stressors that are playing out now and see where the coping mechanisms emerge and the leadership. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't look really similar.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
We all know this.
The old men are committing suicide faster than old white men are committing suicide faster than anybody else.
Yeah, I like that. Any other thoughts folks had? Well, this has just been ripping through. Because I have something.
Is that?
Go ahead, Krista.
I just had a question about that comment about old white men committing suicide. Is that like a thing?
Yeah. Yes.
Because they're
go ahead.
Because their reality is crumbling. They can't handle climate change. Like it's related, or
I don't know if it's related to climate change. I don't know of any studies that do that, but the idea that older white men are the highest demographic.
it's fascinating. There's a novel. It's not very.
There are homicides in the country.
Wow. There's a novel that I read. It's not terribly good, but it's called 2030, and it's by Albert Brooks. And it's the only thing I've ever seen about intergenerational tension, which is, you know, a thing of climate change. If you look at, like, you know, Greta Thunberg and this kind of like, you're stealing our future kind of thing, this novel kind of plays that out to like active sort of uprising of the youth against, they call them the olds, OLDZ, the olds. So just to say, it's another interesting theme.
Cool.
Well, I think it's a theme because I'm an educator, right? I think it's a very big theme. To what extent, you know, but I think all the kids have got to be sent to to what extent room, you know, like every time they come to an agreement, you know, a thought, an understanding of every time that they come to, no, we got to throw the whole thing out. Nope. You know, to what extent, you know, go get questioned on that, you know, to what extent do we throw out law?
Right. Any other last thoughts about the book? Or I wanted to ask you just a few questions because this is our last one of the school year about this. Since we've also, it's nice we've got a good group here of folks that have been on throughout the year. What have you enjoyed about this? What do you think would make something like this better? How can we get more folks to join? Any thoughts that folks have in general around this whole Teach Climate Book Club thing? Kind of leave it open-ended.
I deeply appreciate that it exists. The groundwork that you're doing to just put the structure in place and lay it out there forces me to do something I want and need to be doing. And it brings a sense of community outside of my workplace to talk with people from varying perspectives about things that really matter. So, I mean, it's filling a lot of needs for me, and I want to thank you, and I want it to keep going.
And so, Wendy, I mean, so Sarah and Wendy are like two sort of different demographics. So Wendy is like a professional who is working in climate change education, and Sarah, you're a teacher. And like we have sort of struggled with thinking about who is our audience for this. And so I'm wondering, one of our thoughts have been like, well, what if we, timing wise, if this was offered during the day, would like raise your hand or say yay or nay if you could come, or you would have to, if this would work only as an evening offering for you?
I would struggle in the day.
Okay.
I'm retired.
Same here.
Yeah. Okay.
I wish that it were going to happen in the summertime though, because that's when teachers do their planning.
Yeah, and so there's another thing. Like, do you think some folks would come over the summer for teachers would join? I feel like teachers check out, don't you think? That's how I feel.
That's when I used to do all my reading, though.
Yeah.
So this has been nice to have a motivator to go get through a book every month. And for me, it's been really nice to sit in on this, and then, you know, the stories that we're reading, to bring it back to my students and share some of this stuff with them, especially when I was teaching my climate class in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
They were very intrigued in the books they were reading, and I just had a few people graduate that I was like, hey, I love these books. I think you will too, and shared those with them as well.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yep.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm hearing that maybe there's no strong reason to stop in summer because some people could read more in summer.
Except for Jen is on maternity leave, and I have 2 jobs right now, and
Can somebody else step forward and do it?
we are a small shop.
No, I didn't mean from your end. I just meant in terms of the audience.
Wendy, are you offering to host a book club?
I haven't even been able to figure out how to be a blogger yet.
Oh, right. Well, that's the other thing. If anyone is interested in writing a blog reflection on the year, on the book, on their favorite book this year, we would love to share that too. Is there any other format you think, like the fact that you all have been coming, this is not a very like scientific study. Obviously you've been coming because we're reading a book every month. Can you see doing something different, like an article or just like a topic, or would you be as compelled to come?
I wish.
Bless you.
Thank you. I wish that we would read some really beautifully written nonfiction as well. Well, we did, right?
Mm-hmm.
We read one.
Yeah.
Just last month.
I haven't been with it long.
The Rising.
Yeah.
The Rising, right?
Yep. Yeah. I love that one. That was great.
It was
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I would come for articles too.
Okay.
It would meet the same need.
Yeah.
And themes, but a theme without supporting common documents to read would be much harder for me to. I mean, that's my day job.
Right.
But to come with, let's all consider the merits of this other thought or story that's been put out there, and then thoughtfully consider it from our different perspectives, regardless of whether it's a book or a series of articles or something, is still compelling.
Was there, when you think back on the ones that you read, for those of you that have been in and out, what are your favorites? Or favorite one that you read this year? You could probably.
I don't think I'm kidding. This was my favorite.
Yeah.
It was by far the most compelling, and I think it's partially because the story, instead of being fiction, was a story that's already played out in our country. It was the things you wrote in your bullet points about the power of storytelling. It's like, we've already told this story.
Right. Well, and that's from that article, like the summary of like, this is how we need to get people to understand migration. I'm like, oh my God, this book, this is what everyone just needs to read. Great for that. Now I have to, does anyone see the movie? It's on my list now. I have to watch the movie with the awesome old actor. Oh gosh, what's his name? I'll have to look it up.
No. I haven't seen the movie either. I don't know if I want to see the movie.
Henry Fonda is Tom Joad.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
No, I've heard the movie is lovely, actually. Any other favorites besides? I mean, I would agree too. I don't think there were any others for me that were a close second. There were others I'm glad I read. I really, really, did we read the one, the woman who has a baby? Was that this year? The way,
The End We Start From.
The End We Start From.
That's one I bought for one of my students.
Oh, did you read that one, Wendy?
No, so I didn't make every one this year.
Was that this year, Sarah?
Yeah, that was this year.
Oh, that is beautiful book. Yeah. It's written, I don't know, we would need Krista to explain what type of fiction it was, but it was like a poetry it takes like 3 hours. It's a super short read. It's absolutely gorgeous and troubling and disturbing and all those things. But it's
It was good.
Yeah. Well, any other? So I would love. I'm going to follow up. We have like almost 200 people that have registered for this, and have struggled with. Obviously, this is actually our largest group we've ever had, I think. And
do you have any ability to know how many people are benefiting from the recording?
Oh yeah, we can see how many folks watch the YouTubes. So I think there's usually like 10 to 15 at the end of a month. So people are watching them, or at least part of them. I mean, you can maybe even see how long.
So I have talked this up to a number of climate education professionals.
Uh-huh.
And they were all extremely interested.
So
and
how do we
get them the link? And I said, "Come join us."
Yeah.
And I think it's the barriers of life.
Oh yeah, it is.
But I think if any of them came to one, I think
they'd be hooked.
Be highly likely to come back.
Well,
so I think the hurdle is getting them to the first one.
Right. Maybe that's everyone's like, all of you have a job. And if you are going to come back in the fall, you aren't allowed unless you bring a partner.
I've really tried, and I will keep trying. I mean, I keep talking it up, and I keep telling people what I get out of it, and giving them the link. And how do you make someone come in their free time?
Well, so our Teacher Institute this summer is for humanities teachers, although mostly science teachers are signing up so far, but we'll see if we get a load that are interested in the fall after that, because it's, for that.
We could talk to the Department of Education, like John Olson, and see if he could get it in like the monthly newsletter for.
He's put it in before.
Okay.
But I mean, it's great. Yeah. He's put it in, but we'll look into it again. Megan and Jenna are going to go back to sort of discussing it in August, and but also I'll be asking for some book suggestions. So keep your eyes open this summer. If you read any good ones and stuff, let me know. So
I keep mentioning that beautiful book that I love so much, which is Braiding Sweetgrass, because it's not specifically climate change, but it's more, even more broadly what we have to do to live well with Earth.
Yeah. Well, and that's totally in line with like solutions and it's a beautiful book. I'm supposed to read her first one, which has the word moss in it.
Yeah.
Something about moss, but Robin Kimmer, right?
Yeah, Kimmer. She's a moss expert. That's why.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm going to think this summer and think about this idea too of the classics and what other books can we look at now through like a different lens that I've read in the past. And I don't know, we'll see if we can fit in Wuthering Heights somehow.
So Krista was mentioning World War Z, sorry. Has that already been on the list?
No. I mean, we could throw in a good zombie book. That would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, well, the reason I was thinking zombies is that makes for a draw, right? Like,
yeah. No, definitely. Oh, and I mean, what do you think do you think it adds richness when you bring in the author? I mean, it sort of does, or is it better just to be an intimate discussion?
I thought that I attended one of the ones where the author joined us. and it made for a completely compelling, different kind of conversation.
Yep.
It restricted some of the things I didn't care for, although I think people were constructive about it.
Yeah.
But it brought so much perspective on the process of getting the story together and told. So I think it makes for a healthy mix.
Yeah, I feel like that would be a good thing next year, to be better about trying to get, like, you know, half or a quarter of them. Or
How come you didn't get Steinbeck?
I don't know. He, I mean, he'd have to come as a zombie. That's a great, no, it is. There's some good zombie ones out there. I read them for a while, actually.
I mean, that wouldn't be my first choice, but I would be I would read it and I'd be fascinated for the discussion, just like the other. Right?
Yeah, I was forced to read one because I went to a book, a reading with the author, Colson Whitehead's, I forget what it was called, but I was like totally like, oh, these are really interesting. So I read a couple zombie books for a while. They're kind of good, you know, but I like that idea. Well, I'm going to let y'all go. It's 8:00. It's been a lovely year. Jenna and Megan pass on their hellos as well, and we will definitely be in touch. Please pass along any sort of feedback or ideas or anything you might have. And
well, I want to thank you, and in the spirit of a visual, I want to give you a round of applause.
The clips and the bound. And if you're out in DC, well, you know, we're going to be out there in August, so maybe we can hook up with you somehow. That'd be cool.
I know my travel schedule through next July, so tell me what dates. And
it's I'll send it our Teacher Institute, which is the first weekend in August. August 5th, 4th through 7th, we're going to be there.
Oh, sigh, I'm not.
Oh, no way.
No.
Well, if you have friends, we're doing climate trivia night at Denison's Brewing Company.
I'll send a couple ringers right over.
And see, and there'll be prizes. So it's the real deal.
Well, thank you, and thank you for everything, seriously.
Great. Well,
I look forward to fall in whatever form.
Yes.
Yeah.
I look forward to our discussions then, too.
Good
All
night,
right, everyone. Take care.
Everybody.
Good night.
Mike.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, Mike.
Wendy, how do I become a climate education professional?
Well, let's talk. Do you have my email?
I don't know. I don't think so. Do I?
I don't know. Can I?
We don't all have each other's emails though, right?
If you email me, Lucy, I can email you. Lucy, you email me and I'll email you Wendy's email.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right, take care, everyone.